Keep watching Rise and Shine. It's a Sunday morning. It's the 23rd, and we did tell you that we'll be having the guest in the show right after the break. And it's time for me to welcome Mr. Vipula Wanigaseker, former diplomatic envoy for Sri Lanka in Norway, Director General of Sri Lanka Tourism, and now General Manager of Sri Lanka Convention Bureau of the Ministry of Economic Development. Good morning to you. And
good morning.
Great to have you back on show.
Right, and it's a great day for me to address your audience also on a day like this. It's a Person Poe Day, and it is on a day like this the Buddhism was introduced to Sri Lanka, and since then Sri Lanka has predominantly been a Buddhist country, and we have preserved this the core messages of Buddhism for over 2,600 years now, so it's certainly a privilege for me to be here this morning.
And Ms. Vipula, now as you very clearly mentioned, it's pride and place for Sri Lanka when it comes to Person Poe Day. You're going back in time way beyond 2,000 years where Sri Lanka actually received Buddhism from India. And is there any opportunity, or is there a way forward when it comes to preserving the values and the knowledge that we have gathered from that? And Sri Lanka, as you mentioned, being a predominantly Buddhist country for more than 2,500, 2,600 years now. Is there a way forward in this?
Yes, now, as far as the core message is concerned, I would say the core message is preserved, and with due respect to the Mahasangha and also the Buddhist scholars as well as the Buddhist scriptures, the message that Buddha has conveyed is really simple, and it's a way of life. There are so many definitions. Some people call it end of suffering, and or attaining enlightenment, or a path to Nirvana. So there are so many definitions, but there is a problem when it comes to, over several centuries, any doctrine is subject to deviations, and one reason I would say is that there are volumes and volumes of scriptures, and there are over 20,000 sutras, and there's Abhidhamma, which deals with mind and matter, and running into pages and pages. So people tend to interpret this Dhamma in their own ways, and that would lead to some kind of deviations, and that is inevitable. So I think the way forward is to go back to basics and stick to what the Buddha has said long time ago. And there are some sutras that are very, very short, because the whole idea is that, this is not a knowledge that you can give from one person to another. It's a self-inquiry. You have to discover this yourself. And as long as that message is conveyed to the people, I think that is sufficient.
Right, and talking about the introduction of Buddhism on a day like today, and it has come down to Sri Lanka over 2,000 years ago, and we know that who brought in Buddhism to our country, Venerable Mahinda, was a tourist himself. And for the Sri Lankans to accept it, and it's of course a very divine thing, but do you think, since Sri Lanka has become a Buddhist country now, do you think the foreigners, the tourists from outside, come into Sri Lanka to learn Buddhism?
Yes, now I'm also coming from the tourism background, and yes, Venerable Arhat Mahinda Thera was a tourist, and that's how this Dhamma was gifted to Sri Lanka. But it is a pity that Sri Lanka is not able to reciprocate this to the other countries. There are large number of tourists, and the current studies show that as high as 40 million people travel out of their country seeking some kind of inner peace, and they go to various places, and there are indeed places available like Amaravati in England, or Plum Village in France, and then you have this Wat Po Pang in Thailand, and there is also a place which is managed by Muji, the famous Muji, and that is in Monte Sahaja in Portugal. And there is also a place in Perth, that is this Ajahn family in Perth. And there are so many places which offer this doctrine to people who are seeking inner peace. And somehow in Sri Lanka, we have not been able to provide this opportunity for people. There may be so many reasons. One issue that I see is that most of these foreigners who come here, they are here for a very short period. And probably they tend to see these traditions being practiced as rituals, because they look for some kind of a rationale in doing something. You can't just say, okay, you do this and this will happen. And when they look around and they don't see that much of the Dhamma, the core message of Dhamma being conveyed, so they are wondering what's going on. So that is one problem. And there are indeed some meditation centers in Sri Lanka, and the problem is that the meditation courses they are offering are very rigorous. It's a very stringent kind of a thing, and when you have only 10 days holiday, they don't have that much of time to go through the entire course from meditation on tranquility and then switch on to vidarsana or insight meditation, and that's a kind of a rigorous exercise which they cannot go through. Now, as I said before, the message is very simple. As long as you can convey the message which helps them to start the self-inquiry, that is sufficient, because the discovery is entirely up to you. You cannot give that. It's not a knowledge-based exercise. It's a language of heart. So it's something that you have to discover yourself. So therefore, if that opportunity is given to them, if you go to YouTube today, there are so many spiritual leaders like Eckhart Tolle or Bert Harding or Muji and Adyashanti, and there are millions of hits on this. And all they say is, these are all Buddhistic teachings, but they don't use the label Buddhism or Buddha or anything, and they don't use any Pali, which is no longer understood by people. And always you see the core message is conveyed and allowing people to start thinking. So that's what is required to be done.
And it is more like an inspirational video.
I wouldn't use the word, it's you start thinking about yourself, So you are inspired to do that, yes, in that sense. But all this time you are seeking this happiness from an outside object. Whereas Buddha said, no, there's no way you can get happiness from it. It's all within. So you are directing the attention of people to see within and to see whether there is a self that you have been nurturing all this time. And if you make this discovery, the enlightenment is not something suddenly, you become a saint and you start performing miracles. It's not something like that. But when you discover that this is an illusion and yourself is an illusion, the whole world is an illusion, you're relieved completely, but your life goes on. And in fact, recently I saw a video clip, this Eckhart Tolle, a very famous German today, and he was addressing the Google staff. And as you know, Google, they have all young people and their management style is completely different. And people were wondering, come on, how can this person, he's teaching Buddhism virtually. And people have this tendency to believe that Buddhism is, detachment, you detach from this, that. And how Eckhart Tolle is possibly telling these youngsters. And at the end, it's a 1-hour interview, and I was surprised myself. And he established that, like thoughts, for example, most of the thoughts, 90% of your thoughts, you have thought about these thoughts before, many, many times. So he was explaining this to these people, and at the end he established that, you will be able to be more creative and more innovative because you are living in the present moment, and you don't have expectations, that bother you all the time, or you don't live in the past. This is what he explained in that 1-hour discourse, and everyone was impressed.
And Ms. Vipula, as you very clearly mentioned, it's not that enlightened means that you start glowing or something like that.
Yes.
It's just that you find your inner peace. And as you mentioned, here in Sri Lanka, we do not target a particular audience for that matter. Now, as you said, when it comes to meditation and all that, it's very rigorous when it comes to a lot of places. Is there opportunity for Sri Lanka to develop a niche where they could actually do something to make sure that we get foreigners to this country purely for the aspect of meditation and maybe finding that peace within themselves?
I think there's one technical problem, that is language. We need to speak to them either in English or German or French, because you have to speak to them in their own language. and you don't find that many teachers around, and somehow we have to have this outward-looking approach when it comes to Dhamma, and to develop some kind of a program that is acceptable to the foreigners who come down, and I myself, I'm in touch with most of the tourism plans and tourism hotels in Sri Lanka, and whenever there is an opportunity, the people, who want to know whether, is there any way that we can get to know a little bit of Buddhism, and we come across this difficulty of finding the right person to go and address them, and there are instances that I myself have gone to these places and just a discussion about maybe 1 hour or so, and then come back. So that is a good start, if you can initially get the right type of people who can speak the language, and then stick to the basics. That's the key word, because if you start using a lot of Pali, using a lot of things that are ritual based, then you tend to draw them away from the core teachings.
And talking about getting down people to Sri Lanka and teaching Buddhism, that's basically what we discuss now. And in comparison to what's happening in Sri Lanka, you see a lot of crime rate, you see a lot of drug addiction, and a lot of murders happening, and problems with religion, caste and creed, and about the greed for power. So what do you think should be done with regards to this? As a Buddhist country, I don't think these things are encouraged to be happening in the country alone.
Yes, I think Sri Lanka being a Buddhist country, it should be ideally a model for other countries when it comes to the crime rate and whatever that we are seeing today. This is probably the paradox between the virtues and the reality. Let me give you a small example now. I can see thousands of students attend this Dhampasal on Poe Day, which is a good thing, and it's a good system, because you learn Buddhism, you learn virtues, and you learn how to respect your teachers and parents, and at the same time the biography of Buddha and a little bit of sutras, and you learn all that. So that's because in school probably you don't have time. Now what really happens is, now most of these students, they learn all these things, but as they grow up, they realize that the reality is not exactly that, For instance, the factors to which you give recognition to, it is either, I have heard this, he's from a good stock. What is the good stock, What is the criteria? Or the other day, I was talking to my cousin, and she was trying hard to put this child to one of the schools, and I said, why that school? You're trying so hard, and she was saying, well, that's #1 school, and this is, what the student has been selected is #3. So I said, is there a correlation between that to the number of students entering university, or is there? No, this is rated #1, and that's a profile of. I said, what happens in 5 years' time if that #1 comes down to #5 and this #3 goes up? Because you don't know what's happening tomorrow. So people have come up with their own, and at the same time, the power that, you always, I have heard this many times, he's a big shot in this place, So how do you define that? And at the same time, if you see someone driving a car and you said, you're using the same car, is it? If you're not, change this thing, that means you're not doing well.
Not going with the trend.
Yes, so the matters that are important to them are not in line with what you learn, when you're small. So there is a contrast in this situation. I think that's the biggest problem. And then eventually when they enter the commercial world, the corporate world, it is even worse. I was talking to a CEO at a function recently, and I was simply asking a very basic, mundane question. I said, I have seen in newspapers, this company has earned so many billions of rupees after tax, and that company has made. I said, don't they have a system to do a survey to find out whether the people are happy, and, you can do a secret kind of a survey to ascertain whether they are happy. And obviously, if you ask them openly, they'll say, yeah, I'm very happy, but the reality, perhaps you need a job, and that's why you're hanging around. And I was, in a way, surprised to hear the answer, and and probably from his point of view, because okay, his performance is also judged by the profitability or productivity, whatever. And they said, no, we are ruthless, you know, we don't look at, you know, at the end of the day, you have to make that much of profit. And so these youngsters who learn Dhamma, when they were small, when they get into the world, and they find, look, you know, this is what we have learned is not important. So they tend to improvise. And now I teach in a couple of universities, marketing and event management. I ask them when they go for interviews, and you know, the HR managers, directors, the way these youngsters are interviewed, and the first question they ask you, have you read our annual report? And where do you think our company is heading for? Or they will ask, how can you contribute to the profitability of our organization? So they start, you know, rehearsing and improvising, and the companies also make the blunder by selecting the wrong people, because, you know, if you speak well, if you act well, they think, okay, this guy is good. So eventually you find that, you know, they are also not doing well after a while. The companies also crash and they don't know why. So these are paradoxes, you know. You need to live with the reality, and that is what Buddhism is all about.
And so now, as you mentioned very clearly, when it comes to day-to-day life, people look at it in a very different way to what they were taught when we were kids, when we were schooling. We were taught something totally different to what we experience now. Why is there an illusion of this nature?
I think that is because you are moving away and away from Dhamma.
The core message.
The core message. Because all the activities, all what you do revolve around nurturing the self. Because the Buddhism says, you know, the self is an illusion. What you have is the idea that you have about yourself. But as a self, you know, it's an analysis of your mind and body. What is your mind? It's a conglomeration or a stream of thoughts. One thought after the other, and one thought is reinforced by another thought, which is based on your past experience and expectations of. So the entire world is in your mind. And also there are so many short discourses that Buddha has given for people to start thinking, like live in the present moment. Or they say, Buddha once said that all that you have to lose in this life is what you are clinging on to. Otherwise you don't lose anything. So there's nothing to worry about. And you know, this is the, it is even going beyond attachment, what you are clinging on to, which is not really there. It doesn't mean, you know, that you have to give up everything and walk into a forest and start meditating. You can continue with your life. Now there's another simile that he has given, which I like very much personally. He has said that things are not what they appear to be, nor are they otherwise. It's little confusing, but that reflects the subtlety in this Dhamma, you know, because everything is judged by the five senses that are interpreted by your mind, and you need to find out whether there is anything beyond that. If you accidentally touch a lamp, you know, a wick which is lighting, and suddenly you pull your hand away, your mind doesn't do that. It's your consciousness, you know, and it is there with you. All you have to do is to discover that. But you are so much indulged in your day-to-day activities. You know, you pull your hand back quickly, instantly and promptly, while your mind is, you know, far away, thinking what you have to do tomorrow and what has happened, and, you know, regretting over something or brooding over something, and creating this false self. So once you have discovered that, you are greatly relieved. So that is what is expected. You know, it's a great philosophy. It's a great doctrine. It's just that, you know, people are now, unfortunately, majority are trying to use this doctrine and to enhance the position of the self, which is very, very contradictory to the Dhamma.
And very true, sir, because as we have always seen, for anybody, when it comes to corporate world, they'll start off at a very low level, probably earn a very small amount, but going up the ladder, probably by the time they end up at corporate managerial level, it's just that even though they probably earn maybe 10-20 times more than what they started off with, still it seems like it's not enough, because they gradually look for all sorts of luxurious stuff around them and then end up looking for a little bit more all the time. Is it a lot to do with the rat race that we are in, or is it just that we are, as you clearly mentioned, that people are moving moving away from the Dhamma, the teachings that we have got? Because it's not the same, because when it comes to even at directorial levels, when it comes to managing a business, people, as you clearly mentioned, looking at the bottom line numbers instead of looking at uplifting the employees' livelihood.
Absolutely. So there are several ways of looking at this. What is the purpose? You know, if you walk into some of these organizations, you find there's a beautiful mission statement saying that, you know, we are in this business and our final objective is to ensure that we do something positive to the mankind or the people in this country. You know, these are beautiful words, but if you really see what is happening inside, it is not so. These are highly profit-driven organizations. And there is a manager whom I met, whom I know very closely recently, and he was working in a very reputed organization, and he has retired, and he is only 52 years. So I asked him, look, you know, you have a long way to go. And he said, look, if I continue, and he has done well in terms of material, you know, how much he has earned and, you know, whatever. And he said, I left because I couldn't take it anymore, because if I had continued, I would have got a stroke or something and gone, you know, probably in a couple of years' time. But now I'm okay, I'm a consultant, I just do a little bit of things. You see, this is why these so-called, you know, the material world, the people are now seeking this inner peace, because they have found that, you know, they had a lot of desires, ambitions, and when one desire is fulfilled, another arises, then you go after that, and something else arises. There's no end to this. So therefore, one day you realize that, no, this is not the happiness, there is something else, and I need to go after that. So that is where they start looking for this inner peace. And even from the corporate's point of view, that I know some years ago when we were learning marketing, there was an entrepreneur who has built his company, and the day he was, you know, he was very sick, he was old, and he was kind of thinking, and then his children were around him, and they had to take over his business. And he said then that he was in the manufacturing company, and he said, before he died, he said, ensure that my customers, the consumers, get a good product from this company. And they immediately made it the mission statement. You know, those days there were no mission statement. But subsequently the children decided to, yes, you know, that was our father's vision. And he had kept this company for over 40 years. You know, that's how you manage, because finally it is not the system. In fact, I mentioned this conversation that I had with the CEO, and what he said was, you know, we run our organization ruthlessly. And once we introduce the system runs the organization. So what about the people? What about their feelings? What about their livelihood? What about their, you know, finally the human aspect of this? It's completely ignored, and I don't think it's a good trend, because what is happening in Europe, I believe, is partly due to this. You know, people have run out of jobs, and nothing is moving, because you have ignored the human aspect and you have indulged yourself in systems. And suddenly you realize that they have not fulfilled the basic requirements of people, and people are without jobs now. In some of the countries, I'm sure you would have seen in the news.
And very true.
And also talking about finding inner peace and satisfaction, Mr. Vipula, we noticed that many people do not have the time to spend time with their family or actually go out with them, have fun and enjoy at home. So I think it all relates to all this systematic way of life, and you know, you've got to focus on earning more, living a better life, but eventually they do not get that. So what do you think is the best way to put it in practice in the way which the Buddha has taught us?
You accept what the basics that you require to deal with your life. Let me give you another example. Now, this year we are holding the biggest conference, or rather the second biggest conference by end of the year, which is Chogam, and that is going to bring in 50 world leaders. Now, we held non-aligned conference way back in 1976. That brought in 83 world leaders into this country. We never had mobiles, we didn't have cars, we didn't have emails, we didn't have any of those sophisticated. But we handled that conferences professionally on par with international standards. How did we do that? Because of this human aspect. You know, we used all the manual system to do that. Of course, one might argue that, you know, you can't go back. I'm not referring to that. It's just that, you know, as long as you live with with your essential needs, that will help you to have more time with your family, with your, you know, when you get into the system-driven life, then obviously, you know, that's why most of the time, you know, you need your mobile and the messages, emails, everything. You can attend to all that, you know, in a particular time. And by doing that, you are not productive either, because you make wrong decisions also, because you are in this rat race, and sometimes you make all the wrong decisions and you face the repercussions also.
And a lot to do with technology, I think, because now when we look at it, everybody's got a sophisticated mobile phone, because when it was introduced to the country, it was huge and it was something that you had to take someone to carry with. Right. But now it has developed into such level that even at 6-digit numbers, maybe 100,000 or even more, people tend to buy it without realizing that it's a matter of communicating, without realizing they have gone in for the secondary values of the unit without actually looking at the core value, where it's about making a call to someone when it is necessary, when it is at an emergency, because you have enough and more landlines. We have lost the interest of why a mobile phone was developed, and it is in case of you're traveling somewhere, it's to convey a message. And now what it has actually become is, it has become a fashion accessory, and people tend to look for sophisticated things, colors and all that. And when it comes to anything and everything now, when it comes to even computers, we human, we have the opportunity of deciding on various aspects. But when it comes to a computer, it's either a yes or a no, or try or retry or something like that. It's accept or cancel.
Right.
Now we have basically given ourselves, restricted ourselves from looking out the window and looking at the global aspect of it. Maybe when it comes to life, how well we can actually celebrate life, we have restricted ourselves to maybe accept or reject.
Another thing in support of what you said, that the technology that has come to stay, and every day it's advancing. Now, some years ago, when they introduced the virtual meetings, you know, you can have video conference, and there was a huge threat that it will have an adverse effect on the real conference business. And everyone thought, you know, the virtual meetings, it's going to be the future. People don't have to travel, people don't have to meet. But nothing happened. You know, the conference market has grown. So people have realized that, you know, this human interaction, human to human, it cannot be replaced by the technology. Now, that is a fact. Now, if I use a mobile, as you said, you know, I don't use half of the features that are given then. I don't even know, because it's not, you know, so sometimes you might pay thrice the price to buy a particular machine, and you don't even know how to operate. All you need is communication. And sometimes, and irony is that, you know, you carry, now that you mentioned mobile, you carry a mobile, but when you need to contact someone, you can't contact him on the mobile either, because you use it, your whims and fancies. Okay, I can't be contacted at this time, you switch off that and you put it away, that's it. You know, if for an emergency also, you can't reach the person.
So the main purpose is not done, and actually we've come to the close of the program, Mr. Vipula. Time certainly flies, I'm telling you. So, you know, with that, it's time for us to wrap things up on Rise and Shine, and talking about technology. Make use of it in the right way, and I'm pretty sure you'll be on track and you can move on and, you know, do the simple things. That's best. And thank you very much, Mr. Vipula, for being a part of the show, and it was a great honor having you in.
Thank you very much indeed.